If you were an old lady with a bad case of swamp ass, what would you do with your army of evil scarecrows? The ruins of Berez are big. They're huge and almost entirely empty and almost entirely optional. A lot of parties don't even go there at all. It's great for their longevity, but otherwise it's just a darn shame. So how do you get your party to dive face first into the sucking muck of Baba's Bog? Unless there's an item of power there, or you have latched on to the missing winery gem quest, there's the Skull of Argynvost. That's right, I said the Skull of Argynvost. I know, the module says that the skull is in the Hall of Bones, deep within the bowels of Castle Ravenloft. But you know what? Screw that. Let's take Argynvost's skull and swap it out for the flying giant skull that Baba likes to use. Why, you might ask? Well, simply because there's no other flippin' giants in the game. We've got giant statues, we've got giant snakes, we've got giant spiders, we've got a giant goat, but no actual giants. So why the heck is there a giant skull in the middle of a swamp? I don't know. Take it out and replace it with the dragon skull. And you know what? Things make a lot more sense. Plus, you get another reason for your party to go into the swamp. You're welcome. Okay, so now you can get your party to actually go to Berez. How do you get them to explore it? I mean, like I said, this place is big. It's 3,300 feet to a side. That's almost 11 million square feet, which, not gonna lie, sounds a lot more impressive than 1 square kilometer. But the question still remains, how do you let players explore this much area and make it both fun and engaging? The answer is easy. You turn it into a hex crawl. I know, hang on, I said fun, but bear with me and don't shoot me. What we do is we divide Berez into a bunch of hexagons that are roughly about 200 feet wide. Now, starting from the crossroads and moving to the east, well, it is all obscured by fog. This is like swamp gas, or maybe it's Baba's gas. I'm not sure, and I don't want to be sure. When your party wants to move into an obscured hex, have them choose a direction and a navigator. The navigator is the character that makes a DC 10 survival check to keep their bearings. Now, if they fail this check, they become lost, and you hide any maps the players can see. Their next movement is based entirely at random by the roll of a d6. When they move into that new hex, you start the navigation process all over again. Once they pass the check, then they're no longer lost. They have recovered their bearings and you can put the maps back out on the table. When the party enters an obscured hex, go ahead and check for a random encounter. Roll your d20, and on a result of 16 or above, something happens. Roll again on the random encounter table that you can find linked below and see what they do. Now, there are several hexes that have special encounters attached to them. These are Baba's Bog, and the church, and the mansion, and the goat pen, and stuff like that. So go ahead and run those separately aside from the random encounters. The idea behind all of this is to make exploring Berez a dangerous act of exploration. And finding encounters like the church, and Baba's hut, and the mansion are pretty cool and very exciting. Speaking of the mansion, let's talk about that little encounter. If you've leafed through the module at all, you've probably noticed these little quotations down in the bottom corners of a lot of the pages. Most of these quotations, or maybe all of them, come from a single book, and that's I. Strahd, The Memoirs of a Vampire, which, by the way, is legitimately a good book that you should go check out. Although the module loves to use the book for quotations, it pretty much ignores it in terms of canon and continuity. One part that it egregiously ignores is Laszlo Ulrich, the previous burgomaster of Berez. Now, the module paints Laszlo as the loving stepfather who sadly kills his daughter Marina to keep her out of Strahd's clutches. What it leaves out is what's from the book I. Strahd, and that's the fact that Laszlo was conspiring with the local priest to replace Marina's adoption papers with a marriage certificate. That's right, Laszlo was the Barovian Woody Allen. Neutral good my ass. So what do we do with this information? Well, we change Laszlo's story and the encounter in the mansion. Instead of murdering Laszlo and then binding his soul to the mansion, because there's no other mention of Strahd being able to do that anywhere else, Strahd instead turns Laszlo into an undying ghast. Laszlo was then chained up inside the study of the mansion, where he would forever stay and watch the world crumble and decay around him. Much like Mrs. Durst in Death House, Laszlo retains some of his memories and a perversion of his original personality. When your players encounter Laszlo, he does his best to remain in the shadows. He can't move more than 5 feet in any one direction, so his success is going to be a bit limited there. When he does end up talking to them, he's going to kind of cycle through throwing vile insults at them and pleading for them to free him and trying to get them to come closer so he can eat them, and promising them gold and treasure if they'll just help him. He, of course, doesn't have any of that. If Irina is with your party, Laszlo's behavior becomes pretty lewd and lascivious. He calls her Marina and begs her to come closer and smile for her daddy. He was a pretty creepy and lewd guy in his life, and he's even worse in death. Now, just so you know, if you want the written editions of this guide and other guides, you can get them by being a patron of our channel for just as little as $1. That being said, on with the guide. Next, let's talk about the church and Marina's monument. In the module, these are two completely separate locations, but we're going to merge them together and make things a bit more interesting. Now, after Marina's death, Strahd had a monument erected in her likeness, not in some random spot in the swamp, but instead inside the church's graveyard at the far end on a rise. She's in a place of honor, not in some backwoods random spot, because why? Laszlo wasn't the only transgressor in Strahd's eyes. There was also Brother Grigor, the one who actually delivered the killing blow to Marina. Much like his partner in crime, Grigor was turned into an undying ghast. And unfortunately for him, Marina's monument wasn't the only bit of redecoration that Strahd did in the graveyard. You see, for the past several hundred years, Grigor's body has been hanging up on the exterior wall of the church overlooking the graveyard. He's been nailed to the wall with very long iron spikes, and I imagine it's been a very uncomfortable time for him. Grigor spends his days rambling incoherently into the mists. Now, chances are your party is going to hear him before they see him, and when they emerge into the graveyard and Grigor finally catches sight of them, he's going to fall into his old habits, and he's going to begin to preach. But he's not going to preach of the Morning Lord like he would have in life. You see, Brother Grigor has had a lot of time to think and sleep and dream. He's going to start to preach to them of darker things, of a darkness beyond the understanding of man, of glorious evil in shadowed halls, of black beings trapped within the hearts of amber. Scary stuff. But you know what's really scary? Baby toys. I'm serious. Baby toys in the wrong context are freaking scary. Take a look at this. Are they gone? All right, so now you know that Baba Lysaga thinks that she is Strahd's true mother. We're gonna take this twisted sense of motherhood and just scatter it around the swamp. Littered around the swamp are baby toys, baby paraphernalia, rattles and rocking horses and cribs and whatnot, all in a rotted state of decay and all bearing these occult symbols and carvings of ravens, and it's ugly stuff. Now, if your party picks up any single piece, they'll be able to see inscribed on it the words, "Is no fun, is no Blinsky." Come on, how do you think Blinsky stays in business? When the party first enters the swamp, these items are scattered onesie-twosie here and there. And as they move further and further inward, the density begins to increase. As they get nearer and nearer to Baba's hut, it starts to look like a baby junkyard around here. If you're running this as a hex crawl, this increase and decrease in density is really helpful as a hot and cold sort of reading to determine how close you are to Baba's hut. Now, as you also know, in the middle of Baba's hut is an illusory baby Strahd. She coos over it, I would assume, and pretends to take care of it, whatnot, whatever she does. But with all of these baby toys strewn about, it stands to reason that this isn't an illusion anymore. There's got to be something real there because illusions can't play with toys. So what do your players actually find in the middle of Baba's hut? What they do find in the middle of the hut Really? Whew. Oh boy, it depends on your party, I'm gonna tell you that. Read the room. Know what your players' limits are, because they're gonna find one of two things. They're either gonna find a clay golem fashioned into a baby, or they're gonna find a flesh golem. But that requires parts. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, the flesh golem idea is very much in line with the whole theme of the module. There's child abuse galore through this thing, which, say what you will about that, but it's very much fitting with the overall theme. However, not all groups can handle that level of darkness. I have 2 children, one of which is around that age, and I don't think I could run my game like that. It's just a little too much for me personally. So I would go with the clay golem, but read the room, like I said, and choose whatever works best for your game. If your party's wandering around Berez for any extended period of time, they're gonna run into Baba. They're either going to walk right into her hut, or they're gonna mess with the fence around the goats, or they're gonna do something equally as stupid and draw her attention. In any case, Baba's gonna encounter your players and vice versa. Assuming your party sees Baba when she isn't bathing in blood, describe her as an old lady walking hunched over with a cane. Instead of rags, she's dressed in a robe or cloak of raven parts. Beaks and feathers and feet all stitched together in this very macabre haute couture garment. Make her the Cruella de Vil of the avian world. If you can, let Baba have a conversation with the players. She's not the most gracious host in the world, so she's not going to invite them in for tea, but she will talk to them. She might even give them some information, if not her whole grand plan. She's kind of like a cat that plays with its food for a bit before eating it. It's not like she's going to let these interlopers just walk out of her swamp, so why not have some fun? When combat does start, because it will, have Baba immediately get into the Skull of Argynvost and take to the sky. She's gonna get out of range of all of these melee fighters that she knows that she cannot stand up against. Once she's up there, she's going to immediately summon her swarms of flies and target them at the squishiest of the characters. From there on, she's gonna start pelting the party with long-range spells that are in her repertoire. So unless your party has ranged capabilities, they're pretty screwed here, because Baba is very difficult to deal with. Now, if you want to give them a heads up on this, go ahead and have Muriel Vinshaw amidst the standing stones clue them in and tell them something to the effect of, "You better have a bow and arrow ready." You might be tempted to throw the walking hut into the mix right away, but I'd caution you against doing that. The hut is your ace in the hole, or Baba's ace in the hole. I recommend pulling that out when Baba's at about 60% health. From there, it kind of changes the tide of the battle and can really send things downhill, so you don't want to bring it out too early and just wipe the party without giving them a fighting chance. Now let's talk about how you end this battle. Like all battles, it can go one of 2 ways. It can either go for a loss or a win for the party. We'll cover both here. First, let's talk about the loss. In this case, you definitely want to fail forward. This is a very easy battle to lose, and I don't think it's a great place to end your campaign, to be perfectly honest. So if Baba does end up trouncing your party, go ahead and give them a second chance. Baba, impressed with their prowess, decides to give them a job. You see, there's something in Strahd's castle that she doesn't like, and Baba can't really get near Strahd because he's not gonna like her very much. The thing that she wants dealt with is the Hag's Eye that hangs around Cyrus's neck. Now, I mentioned this in my previous Bone Grinder video as another fail forward. This is where the players actually go and get it back. Now, Baba wants this thing out of Castle Ravenloft and she wants it destroyed. So she's going to, I don't know, maybe polymorph the party into mice and send them on in to do the deed, and promises to change them back if they can bring her the Hag's Eye. But what if your party wins and kills Baba? That's great, right? Well, yes, it is. It's fantastic and good for them. This is a difficult battle to win. Now they're in for a bit of a moral quandary. You see, as written with the illusory baby Strahd, the illusion disappears when Baba dies. Not so much with the golem of clay or flesh, whichever you chose. It continues on with the last order that it was given by its creator. And in this case, the order was act like a baby. Now here, I think your party is faced with a very difficult decision. What do they do with this little crying, mewling, helpless thing that's lying in the crib? It's not a real baby. It's just a golem. It's never going to grow up. It's never going to grow old. It's never going to be more than what it is now. That is, in fact, why Baba created it in the first place. What do they do with it? Do they leave it there to act out its miserable charade for all eternity? Do they take it with them? Do they deliver it to the orphanage? Or do they end its little existence? So I want to know, what would your band of fearless, intrepid, and righteous heroes do?